Hey everybody, it's time for another Mini Mondays, and today I want to be talking about my top 5 things I'd like to review but can't. So these are things that over the course of my show I've really wanted to review because I do have strong opinions about them, but unfortunately they don't follow the one rule, which is that it has to be animated for me to review it, or at least be 50% animation for me to consider it, i.e. Space Jam. So these are things I would really like to review. I'm going to touch upon them briefly, and who knows, maybe with my Patreon, maybe someday I'll review them, who knows. But for now, these are things I'd like to review, but I just can't. So number 5 is the video game for the Xbox 360, Lost Odyssey. Now, I do like this game quite a bit, although it's a very polarizing game in my opinion. It's a turn-based JRPG about 4 immortal people who, or technically 5 immortal people, who are trying to find out who they are, where they come from, in the middle of a magic industrial revolution. It's pretty neat, although the game does have some serious flaws with it. The voice acting is pretty bad in some parts, character animations are janky, there's a lot with the story that has problems, a lot of overly dramatic fluff, but it does have some very strong points. The soundtrack is amazing, the parts that do hit home with the characters are really, really impressive. Combat's really good, it's not just your typical JRPG, there's a lot of feedback with it, makes it fun, there's a variety of spells, it's great. So it's a very polarizing game in my opinion. It's on 4 discs too, so I would like to review this. In fact, I would like to review video games in general at some point, but the reason I can't review them is because everybody reviews video games, and what's the point in me reviewing them? I mean, I love video games. I do. I have so many of them, and it's not something I can review because everybody else has done it, so what's the point? The reason I put this one in particular first is because it's a can't right now, but it may be possible in the future if I did ever do my show for a living. Because then I would have the time to actually play through video games and properly write a review for them. But as it stands now, considering I have another job to work, I don't have the time to review video games in full, so I do have to stick to animation. But yeah, I'd love to review this game in depth, but unfortunately for now, it's gotta stay off the list. And number 4, funnily enough, is also Lost Odyssey, but it's actually the 1,000 Years of Dreams story that's in the game. So the 1,000 Years of Dreams is actually, it's a story that's within the game. You gradually uncover pieces of it, and it's about Kaim, the main character, and his 1,000 years of stories of him being an immortal. So I know this is kind of cheating considering it's from the same thing, but this is not a video game, it's a story, so it's pretty much just reading a novel inside the game, and honestly, for all the weirdness that the game story has, the 1,000 Years of Dreams story in it is extremely impressive. It's perfectly sad at times, it's happy, it's got great music to go along with it, it's very emotional, very well written stories. It does have a bit of animation in it, but it's nothing serious. It's not like, it's not like a visual novel or anything like that. It's just stuff that helps the story along, helps set the mood. It's funny how a story that you read can be atmospheric in that regard. So yeah, the 1,000 Years of Dreams is very impressive, and I would like to talk about it in depth, but the reason I can't review this is I don't review stories, I review animation. So much in the way that I'd like to review manga and comic books in a way, well, I can't exactly do that because I don't review them. So yeah, 1,000 Years of Dreams is a very impressive set of stories, but unfortunately they too have to stay off the list. And number 3 is actually a dual role of Basketball and Team America World Police. Now the reason I put these two guys together is because they're by the same people, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, so I just consider them one and the same. And I'd like to review them for the same reasons, is that Basketball is a movie that a lot of people think is pretty shit, and I can definitely see why. It's about 2 schlubs who invent a game that's basically a combination of baseball and basketball. It's very standard, but the thing that sets it apart is that it's very South Park-esque comedy, which I think makes it stand above all the stupid schlock in its kind of ballpark, no pun intended, although pun was extremely intended. It has a lot of charm to it because of Trey Parker and Matt Stone's performance. I love everything that those guys do, and I just think that they steal the show. Everybody else I don't like, except for their best friend Kenny, who I also think is funny, but all the women in it suck. The villain sucks. It's just, if it wasn't for Trey Parker and Matt Stone, I'd think the movie was terrible, but because they're in it, I think it has a lot of charm. I can't review this one, obviously, because it's live action, so yeah, it's no animation, so this one's off the list. With Team America World Police, I love this movie because it's the same reason I love Basketball, in that without Trey Parker and Matt Stone, it would just be like, meh. The characters, honestly, are not very good in it. It has a lot of plot conveniences. It's just, the reason I love this movie is because it's so funny, and it's the perfect kind of Trey Parker, Matt Stone, South Park-esque humor that I really like, that goes along with the sort of post-9/11, foreigner paranoia, xenophobia, I guess, that, makes this movie hilarious. And also it's got America Fuck Yeah in it, which is a great song, and even though it's very standard as a plot, the characters are not very interesting, the technical side of it is very impressive with the puppetry, and I just think it's hilarious. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Now, a lot of people actually wanted me to review Team America, but the thing is that I don't consider puppetry animation. Puppetry, to me, is live action, because when it comes to animation, what I consider animation is if it's going frame by frame. If you can do complete takes of something, then it's not animation. If you have to go frame by frame, it's animated. That's why I consider stop motion animation, but not puppetry. So unfortunately, Team America does have to stay off the list, but maybe I'll get to it sometime in the future. Patreon sponsor, something like that. Hopefully, but for now, it's off the list. And number 2 is the Legend of Zelda manga series. So I actually own the entire manga series, all of them except for Twilight Princess. So this is released by Viz Kids. It was created by Akira Himekawa. It adapts most of the mainline Legend of Zelda stories: Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Oracle of Seasons, Ages, Link to the Past, Minish Cap, Phantom Hourglass, but not Wind Waker for some reason. So the reason I would like to review these is because I do like them, but not that much. I like them because they are somewhat faithful adaptations to the stories, but the problems I have with them are the really serious kiddying up of a lot of the stories, especially Ocarina of Time. Kind of bothers me, because Ocarina of Time is a serious story, for the most part, and it just feels weirdly inappropriate to kiddy it up. But I do think the artwork is very impressive in it, and it just has a lot of charm to it despite the kiddying up. So I'd like to do a whole like a month-long retrospective of this manga series, but as I said before, I don't review manga or comic books or anything like that, so I would like to very much, because I do have a lot to say about them, but unfortunately, these are off the list too. And the number 1 thing I'd love to review but can't is UHF. So, many of you probably don't know, but I'm actually a fairly big Weird Al Yankovic fan. I saw him in concert actually in 2013, and that's where I met Darth Vader and the Stormtroopers. But I've loved Weird Al for a very long time. I think he's very smart and talented. He's very, very funny. I like that he's stayed with the trends and he hasn't become irrelevant. But anyway, UHF is his movie, and at the time, most people didn't like it. In fact, it was critically panned when it first came out. It's got cult following now, but honestly, I would love to talk about this movie more, because even though as a movie it's not particularly good, I love this movie so much. It's got so much charm to it. It's about Weird Al, who plays George Newman, who gets a failing TV network called UHF, and he tries to revive it with the help of Stanley, a weirdo, and his friend. And yeah, very basic story. The villain in it is awful. It's a lot like Basketball in that regard, is that it's got one person in it, 1 or 2 people, who just make it. And in this regard, it's Weird Al and Michael Richards before the issues. I do think it's funny. In fact, I think it's extremely funny. It has such quotable lines. Stupid! Which is great. It's a brilliant movie in how simple it is. But yes, I can understand why people wouldn't like it at the time, because it is pretty corny a lot of the time. When it actually tries to tell a serious story, that's when it gets kind of iffy. But I love all the commercials, like Spatula City, Gandhi 2, Conan the Librarian, all that kind of stuff. This is a movie that I know full well is bad, but I love it anyway. And that, to me, it sort of scratches my reviewer cred a bit, but I feel like everyone needs to have 1 or 2 of those things that they know are bad, but they love anyway. So UHF is that movie for me, and of course, I can't review it because it's live action. Although this does have some animated parts in it, 2 music videos. Sorry, 1 music video. but unfortunately, I don't consider that enough to review it, because that's only about 5% animation. So, yeah, that's too bad, because I have a lot to say about this movie, considering how polarizing it is, but it's just... It's a movie that's very close to my heart, and I would love to do a review of it, but unfortunately, it just doesn't have enough animation to cut it, and it's also off the list. So keep in mind that none of these are necessarily completely off the list as long as my Patreon stays up. I do have the Pledge of Eternal Loyalty, Trust, and Love, which, if you donated to, I could review them, and that's not begging for it or anything like that. I'm just saying, the option technically does exist, but it's quite a price to pay, and for now, until that happens, these things are not going to be reviewable. Which, it's too bad, because I would have a lot to say about them, and I think they'd make fun reviews. Maybe for the video games, if I do my show in the future as my permanent job, then I could get to them, but for now, just gotta live with animation, I suppose. So, that's all I have to say about that.